Welcome to the latest Peer2Peer episode brought to you by Rainer, where we're discussing AI and emerging technology in ophthalmology. We want to look past the hype and actually get into what solutions are emerging for real-day clinic and surgery use. I'm joined by two true innovators in our field, Dr. Eric Rosenberg from the USA, who's a cornea, cataract and complex anterior segment surgeon. Eric is very future-focused, and I know him best as the surgeon who first did a cataract using Apple Vision Pro goggles. I'm not sure if that's your most famous thing, Eric, but that's how I know you. So we'll have a little chat about that. And Stanley Windsor, Head of Digital Health at Rainer, and I believe 150th in line to the British throne. We'll talk about that as well. Stanley is responsible for much of the digital innovation and new products we have seen from Rainer, innovating the patient care pathway. So undoubtedly we'll hear a little bit about eyejourney and maybe some other things too. Welcome to you both. Now, I don't want this to be yet another pie-in-the-sky chat about what's coming in the future, AI stealing our jobs, blah, blah, blah. I want to strip things back and talk honestly about what is genuinely useful right now, what doesn't work, how technology might improve the patient and clinician outcome. So I'd like to start, a bit of an opening question for both of you. What's one piece of emerging technology in ophthalmology that people are either underestimating or are fundamentally just misunderstanding right now? Do you want to go first, Eric? What do you think?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and especially with Stan, where we go way back now. And I appreciate the introduction and everything you've done for the technology and integration into ophthalmology. It's a very exciting time to be an ophthalmologist. But to be fair, what hasn't been an exciting time to be an ophthalmologist, right? We stand on the shoulders of giants as all these technologies have integrated into ophthalmology. It's undervalued, underappreciated. Does that exist? I think all the technologies that are coming out are undervalued and underappreciated, and it speaks to the history of ophthalmology too, because adoption for these things has traditionally been a little bit on the slower end, especially when it changes our workflow and clinician habits. So I'd actually like to say everything, and there's going to be a play for all of this. It's just how we're going to build the APIs, how these things are going to coexist, how the field is going to evolve in the direction it goes. And I think it's going to be a combination of all of us working together to actually show use case and need and either improvements in efficiency or something novel that hasn't existed before. And I think all the culmination of those things together is going to be what drives us forward here.
And Stan, any thoughts? I mean, when you talk about things being underappreciated, undervalued, I think of myself, but I mean, any technologies that you can think of?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Eric. I think that there's lots. I mean, I'm baffled why not every surgeon is using natural language processing for recording consultations and, scribe-esque platforms or AI-powered IOL calculations, for example, and even just the lack of data, true data that we're harnessing for adapting our practice. But what I think Eric did pick up on, which is really key here, is the API integrations. I go into clinics, I'm in one right now, right? And when we're setting up new technology, you hear this massive, great big sigh because everyone's like, not another dashboard that I have to open, or, not a 16th tab that I have to have open, and I have to input all this data again, right? And I think the undervalued and really underdeveloped part here is interoperability and integration. And Eric said it perfectly. We all have our part to play, surgeons from shouting from the rooftops they want it, and us in industry doing our best to make sure that we're not a closed ecosystem.
So guys, both of you are at the cutting edge of this technology. I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I use Claude occasionally. I do the odd thing, but I do admit that for most of us, integrating AI is a little daunting. And for the listeners that have already just started this episode, both of you have already mentioned an acronym API. And I'm going to pretend like I know what these things mean, but for other people who maybe don't, Stan, would you mind telling us what an API is?
Sure. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. Now, if you think about each individual application as having its own set of data, the API is the connector that connects those two applications, as in the interfaces the two.
That was very smooth, almost as though you Googled it 2 minutes ago. That's really impressive. Thank you. Now, back to our scheduled programming. Eric, a lot of sort of good technology comes from frustration points, like pain points within clinics and repeated problems. When it comes to surgery, what did you sort of realize there were frustrations or problems that needed fixing?
Hey, that's a great question, especially in a field where we're already super efficient, right? Especially in cataract surgery, where most of us are doing surgery faster than we've ever had. And part of the problem here too is that as we've become more efficient, our reimbursements have become more efficient as well. And you
So
know,
true.
it's been problematic in that regard because as we look to evolve things and as we look to change and build, we count on the remuneration to be able to help build and fund what it is that we've been doing all along, and just saying that, hey, this is more efficient, maybe doesn't really lend to the whole picture associated with the surgery itself. So we have to start looking outside the box, and that's an exciting thing, right? And when we talk about technologies that pique your interest, a lot of people go towards the flashy, the innovative, the things that are outside the box. In regards to surgery, we've been doing things with a traditional microscope that's already 100, 150 years old at this point. This is not something that's new. And we're hunched over. I take a little bit of offense to you calling yourself old because I'm fairly certain I'm older than you. And that would make me an extinct dinosaur at this point. But why are we using those technologies of yesterday for today? And I think that in order to evolve, we need to see what the benefits are, not necessarily make a one-to-one carbon copy, but how can we do what we've already done better in a new, innovative way?
I recently fixed an inefficiency in theater that I think Stanley would also have, where I was operating and I had a sore throat, so I didn't talk, and we finished a whole hour earlier than usual. So I realized that I am one of the pain points. But but Eric, obviously one of your big innovations has been to a scopes and ScopeXR, and I'd love to ask you more about that. Would you like to just explain what you have been doing there?
Absolutely. So with ScopeXR, we've built a software solution on top of the Apple Vision Pro. The Apple Vision Pro, for those who are unaware of what it is a commercially available product sold through Apple, which is true spatial computing. It uses a series of cameras to be able to actually recreate your external surroundings. So traditional VR, when you don the headset, it takes you to somewhere else. And it does so, you still feel like you're in a computer, but you still kind of feel like you're there. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good with traditional VR settings. And what Apple has done is they've recreated your eyeballs essentially and allow you to recreate your surroundings very intelligently. You can put on screens, you can put on metrics, you can put on diagnostics, you can have solutions that are abound in front of you wherever you want them. They can be moved, they can be, let's say the microscope is right in front of you. I can actually put the screen overlaying that microscope. So I'm no longer doing a little one of these or a little head turn in order to see my Ingenuity or my other 3D microscopes. So, what's interesting about it is that it recreated us. And I find that to be a really astonishing accomplishment in the field of technology. I partnered with a 35-year Apple developer. This guy is a true revolutionary, and his name's Michael Simmons. I, like you, spend most of my time in clinic and in the OR, and because of that, my free time is somewhat limited. So when we're building out these solutions, I wanted something that actually helped me on my day to day versus something that was just going to eat into my free time and take me away from my 4-year-old.
Wow, I love that. I really wanted to, say something flippant like, can I watch a movie while I'm watching a VR case because it gets boring? But the reality is that's actually really cool. And are you using it day to day, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. So all my OR days, I have I'm very fortunate in my hardware in my operating rooms. I have in one room my Ingenuity coupled to the Apple Vision Pro, and in my other room I have a Bionics headset which has the near infrared light setup.
Wow, that's amazing. Now we'll get back to ScopeXR because I'd like to talk a lot more about it. But just on that point of, you know, friction, frustrations, it lends itself to what you've been working on, Stan, as well, where you're seeing sort of recurrent problems in the clinic and better ways to do this. Do you want to sort of tell us what made you think, there's a better way to run a clinic?
Yeah. So since I've been at Rainer, everything we've tried to do in the our digital ecosystem is patient focused, but patient focused means being efficient for the clinician, the surgeon, the specialist themselves, right? And that's how you get, I believe, the best efficiency and the best patient outcomes is by being malleable for the surgeon. Now, I did a lot of clinic observation, spent probably more time than I people wanted me to in clinics. And I I noticed patient consultations and patient education was taking up way too much time. But when I say way too much time, with exactly the same information every single time, you see 12 patients in a clinic, and 80% of everything you say to those 12 patients is exactly the same information you said to the previous 11, right? And I just thought that there has to be a better way to do this. And you know, I worked in oncology prior to ophthalmology, and they have a really robust remote patient education pathway in a lot of their private clinics. You know, pre educating patients so that they come to clinics with questions, not waiting to hear what they need to be told. And that makes you're not removing the surgeon, you're not removing your speciality and your genius from the consultation. What you're doing is allowing much more time to expand on that, to get to know the patient and not just have to give them all of this information that every other patient's had. And went to one clinic, and the doctor wasn't feeling very well at the time. I won't name any names. And you could see the variability in the education that they were giving, And so the other side of this is standardization, you on a good day, as the Barocca advert says, right? So, like, being able to give the same information, but perfectly deliver it every time to every patient seemed like a great place to start in sort of delivering an effective and efficient way of digital sort of leaching into the clinics. And I think what you said, Ben, is true. There's a lot of resistance to a digital adoption, for many reasons, right? But I think starting at sort of ground zero, if you like, and building upon solid foundations is the approach certainly that we've taken.
I like when you said, Stan, that you don't take away from the doctors doing their thing because I think, when I look through, say, Google reviews, people say, oh, yeah, I felt listened to. I had a good chat. It was good. I like chair time. And I know there's so much meeting time put aside to reducing chair time. But, if you could just start the consultation deeper already, where they already know their options, they already know those things, you can still make them feel heard and they've had a chance to chat, but just you get further in before you start that chat.
That's exactly, your Google reviews are, I love the conversation. You really got to know me. You spent lots of time understanding my needs. All that 80% of information is not you spending time understanding their needs. It's just you telling them the stuff they need to know before you get there, right? So
100%. Now, I wanted to pivot a little bit about what's actually useful because at the start of this podcast, I said, right, we're going to be talking some practical tips, some things that people can actually take away from the podcast and think about. Eric, there's a lot of talk always about text-based AI at the moment, scribe services, these sort of things. But, for an anterior segment surgeon like yourself, there's so much visual data as well. Is there sort of anything in that space that you think a clinician could adopt tomorrow after listening to this podcast?
Absolutely. There's plenty of things that we can all adopt. It's just whether or not it's worth the dime investment. And me personally, I've been a huge fan of digital microscopy through and through. It's been a missing key in the ecosystem of digital integrations. And as Stan brilliantly, addressed, interoperability and integrations are a huge facet of moving forward in the field of ophthalmology. So now you talk about digital microscopy, or I talk about digital microscopy, you have filters, you have overlays, you have presbyopic correcting lens centrations, toricity centration, a felt tip marking pen, while interesting, it has 3 to 5 degree error just built into it, right? Now what I do is I take a picture of the eye preoperatively with my biometry. It's all integrated, and then when I put the digital microscope on, the patient about to start the surgery, automatically it takes a picture intraoperatively, knows exactly how much cycler rotation exists in the OR. I don't mark at all, saving me a little bit of time preoperatively with that, which I wasn't very worried about that time to begin with. I'm more worried about my results because, again, that reflects back on me, and I want to give the patients the best of what exists out there today. And same goes with the centration. I can take a picture of visual axis. So the biometer has you actually fixate on a point, so it knows exactly where your visual axis is in an angle kappa, which we perseverated on for, I don't know, the better part of a decade or two.
Yeah.
And we haven't been able to do anything about it, really. Maybe DMM was the closest thing that we had, but now this is a true interoperable solution. That's something that's going to help our patients.
Are there any sort of practical tools that you're looking forward to testing that you think this could change my clinic, this could change my theater?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to test Stan's eyejourney, like
Smooth. That was the smoothest answer I've ever seen. That was fantastic.
You're welcome. Uh, but yeah, no, those are the tools that are going to make my job easier and, are going to free me up to do what it is that I want to do. And I really want my 5 stars on my, Google reviews.
It's so true. Now that was the world's greatest segue. Stan, with iJourney, and you might want to explain a little bit about what it is to anyone that's been living under a rock and doesn't know about it. But what were you really trying to solve? And you've spoken a little bit about the idea of, getting that sort of getting ahead in the consultation, or getting a bit of information to the patients. But it's a lot more. There's a lot more legs to it than just that, isn't there?
Sure. So iJourney is a patient education platform that delivers autonomous patient education. And when I say autonomous, I mean it's the 80%. It's the 80% that's relevant to everyone, right? Not with the aim of completely annihilating your chair time, but being able to give you back chair time to get to know the patient. But we deliver it autonomously through either SMS or a downloadable application that's branded to your clinic that even has a digital avatar of you. And what that does is really helps you build up that rapport with the patient without even having to be there. They retain the information a lot better. They're more likely to listen to it. A big thing for me when I was doing my observations before we made iJourney was I saw some really, really anxious patients, and patients that were physically shaking, with anxiety of just being in a clinic, right? And although that's the extreme end, we know patient anxiety in a clinic is a real thing. White coat syndrome is a real thing. These patients are going to forget 80% of everything you've told them. And then they're going to have to go and use their own AI, Claude or do Google or ChatGPT, right, to answer the questions that they have. So really starts with thinking about them and how we can make their journey through what is quite an intimidating process smoother, easier, and kinder to them.
Yeah, and I also like that, I have patients that will come back in for their post-op appointment. They'll say, look, I Google and I understand I'm not meant to move. I'm not meant to go to the gym. I don't bend over. I don't lift things. I'm like, yeah, maybe in 1950, but, I'd be happy with you going and playing golf today. You just had surgery. It's totally fine. But we have, very little control over what they look up. Whereas with something like iJourney, you can actually provide them with up-to-date bespoke information.
But also your information, right? Because we know not every surgeon does it the same. We have some surgeons that still want videos about wearing your eye shield after surgery, and then we have some that think eye shields were from 15 years ago. So what we build when we build eyejourney for clinics is your information that you're happy with them. A slight an Aussie Kiwi accent, that so it feels like them, right?
Yeah, I love it.
So yeah.
And Stan, did you get any surprises? Because iJourney's been out there in the wild. Are you getting any surprises back of people making weird avatars of looking different, or are they, doing anything that you didn't really expect them to use the technology for?
Not with the avatars, because that's perfect technology, because I make sure that's perfect technology.
Okay.
So iJourney's not just for cataract and refractive surgery. You can use it for AMD, laser, glaucoma, etc. as well. A lot of people assumed when I first brought it out, oh, I'll start with my laser patients because they're younger, they're more engaged, they're more digitally savvy, so I'll start with them. And actually what we found is there's almost a 20% increase in engagement from cataracts patients, an older demographic of patients. So that's surprising. The amount of engagement from the top end of the age bracket is surprising, but also encouraging.
I love seeing the spectrum in AI complexity, from Eric's heads up display type stuff to, just automating messaging to patients. Is brilliant. There's a whole spectrum. I think sometimes we do get carried away with the idea that all AI is incredibly complex and not understandable, but it's just making things easier. And Eric, in terms of layers of complexity, do you think that the idea of ScopeXR is more complex, or do you, when you're thinking about it and creating it, are you like, well, there are some people that don't even like looking at the heads-up display. They want the microscope. We need to make this less complex for them. Like, how does that innovation work for you in terms of thinking what the average surgeon is wanting out of this?
It's a great question, because you're right. We start adding complexities, and we want to decomplexify the OR. That's actually our mission. And everybody wants to be revolutionary. They want their product to be, what, help moves the field and everything else like that. And again, I'm very lucky because our product is quite novel, and it's flashy on top of that because it's Apple, right? That's what makes it a little
True.
bit flashy. But we when I look for products in my own practice, what's ironic is I look for things that are a little bit less flashy and that hit the nodal points of repetition, because that's what's helpful in my practice. That's where AI comes into play. Everybody wants to tag their system as having AI and being, revolutionary in that regard. But I look internally and find where those pain points are. And I did the same thing here with ScopeXR and with Michael Simmons. I was seeing where my pain points are in the OR, and when I put on the Apple Vision Pro, I encourage everybody to do it. You just go to your local Apple store and just put it on and see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. I just did a patient who was not cleared for hospital because her diabetes was wildly under control. She was non-ambulatory, so she needed a Hoya lift. So my ASC didn't want to do her. Medical wouldn't clear her. She had count finger or hand motion cataracts. It was horrendous. She was non-functional. She couldn't even see her daily life. She was telling everybody life is not worth living, right? So you have somebody who's in a dire strait, and we know that cataract surgery is probably one of the safest, most effective surgeries in all of medicine. And because we couldn't move her in the ambulatory surgery center, that's why we couldn't do it. So again, because of these technologies, I found the scope that goes the lowest to the ground. I opened up my legs for the pedals. I was not connected to my microscope. And I did topical anesthesia, right? It's no different than doing it in the clinic. And I was able to successfully complete her cataract surgery, all the while using all these technologies to be able to do it, right? So essentially, I decomplexified cataract surgery for the back end administrative part of that, right? So
That is actually awesome.
this was maybe less than a month ago, and she is so, so happy. It's changed her life.
I think that's amazing. Stan, on the flip side of this, like, Eric's talked about the sort of amazing side of it that probably patients don't even know they're experiencing in a lot of ways. From a patient perspective, what are you seeing? Do you think that patients are knowing that this is AI? And
I think that it comes down to how the surgeon approaches it, right? We've used AI very cautiously in a very focused way to deliver personalized video at scale. But outside of that, ours is still just an expert system.
well, welcome back. You would not believe it. We're talking about tech, emerging technology, AI, everything high tech with two of the most high tech people in the eye world. And we had a technical glitch. I'm going to presume it was Microsoft sabotage of your work with Apple, Eric. So, welcome back. Welcome back, guys. And, a week later, we're all looking fantastic. Slightly different angles, slightly different outfits, but we're back. Stan, I was asking you your thoughts about. I've heard colleagues say that they've sent AI videos to patients. Patients have been aware that it's AI, that it sort of is in that uncanny valley situation where it's not quite human and it's a little off-putting. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that maybe 2 years ago, maybe even 6 months ago, I would have absolutely agreed with you. But I think one of the really exciting things about AI and the sort of digital transformation period that we're in at the minute is that is getting better literally daily, if not hourly. And we are at a point now where AI avatars blink properly and gesticulate like they should with, characters and emotion, etc. And I think that all of those things are playing into us coming out of the other end of that uncanny valley, which we were in. But that said, we have to remember that we're still relying in part on avatars delivering medical information, right? And so there is also a part of it where you probably don't ever want a patient not aware of who is their doctor and who is their avatar. And I think that there's definitely room for it in terms of saving time and everything we've said about with delivering, the large majority of information through a means that's fun but also engaging. But we need to use it sensibly.
The crazy thing is, I'm not even here. This is just an avatar created by eyejourney. After I sent Stan a few photos of myself, that's just what happens. But I think that the other side of all this technology, Eric, is what do you think? Obviously, it's going to be ScopeXR, but what do you think is going to become absolutely standard the way that email does now? What's absolutely ubiquitous that we won't even be thinking about in the future?
If you want to know my honest answer, it's everything. And that's a crazy thing to say. Everything is going to stick. It's just how we're going to define it moving forward and what's going to be valuable. What are those pain points in your practice that you saw the value in the initial adoption of the technology? And there's a lot of options out there, and it shouldn't get you overwhelmed. It should actually excite everybody that's listening to this podcast. So what's funny is I think all of it has staying power. All of it has sticking power. We're going to see this moving into our field. The question is who and when and how. I think those are the real questions that are in front of us now. And people like yourself, people like Stanley, get to help define what that means for people moving forward. So it's exciting, and I'm excited to be an ophthalmologist at this time and point.
And I think, Ben, what Eric's saying there comes back to what we spoke about earlier about the innovation curve and where you are on that innovator curve, right? You're always going to have early adopters that pick things up super quick, and for them everything will stay straight away. They'll have AI scribes, they'll have AI algorithms for recommending lenses based on biometries, etc., right? And all of this will stay, and they'll embed it very seamlessly, very quickly. There will be people at the other end where it does take a long time. And I think if you said what's going to stay now, right, straight away, I think that we are very much at the point where AI scribes are here to stay, and a lot of people even midway through that adopter curve are picking those up and are implementing them. And that's easy, right? Because it doesn't change your clinical workflow. There's no digital transformation journey you need to go on to embed that. You press a button and then you continue with your day as you normally would, your consultation as you normally would, right? I think the things that will be more challenging when we talk about what's going to stay are the things that fundamentally change a workflow, right? So take eyejourney, for example, because I can talk about it fluently, right? We reduce chair time, and we know we reduce chair time. We know we reduce consultation time, and we know we reduce callback post surgery. But that requires a fundamental change and a transformational journey for the clinic to go on to see those benefits. The surgeon needs to change how they talk to their patients and how they approach their consultations in order to recognize that they're pre-educated, and previously these patients weren't pre-educated, so something that requires a digital transformation journey will take longer, I believe, to it's not just to snap your fingers and go. But with that said, I think we're seeing even outside medicine now, things like avatars, for example, like we were talking about, are here to stay. Increasingly adverts are being AI generated adverts and avatars, etc., on those, and in commercials, etc. So I think that things that permeate outside medicine, AI that permeates outside medicine, is already here to stay. Things that don't change your clinical workflow are already here to stay. Things that require a digital transformation journey will take slightly longer. Unfortunately, I'm sure we're going to see the rise in digital transformation consultants that charge you the earth and come into your practice and tell you everything you're doing wrong. Maybe that's my next career move.
I was going to say it could be a future role. And Stan, if you looked at your crystal ball and looked into the future clinic, the patient coming to clinic, at the moment they see a tech, they get measurements taken, they see a doctor, they have surgery. In 5 years' time, what's going to look ridiculous? What are we going to be looking back on and thinking, I can't believe we were doing that?
Do you know what? I think the one thing that will cease to exist are waiting rooms, right? I think that the patient workflow and our ability to remotely assess our patients will remove the need for patients to come in for preclinical examinations, etc. There are lots of visual acuity tools that are getting FDA approved at the minute, right? That have growing amount of evidence that in their validity, right? And so I think we are not too far away from cameras on our phones being accurate enough and good enough to do biometry readings potentially, right? So I think there is definitely the removal of the waiting room, I would say, is what I would hedge my bet on.
That makes sense. I mean, already in clinic, I've got to be really honest, and I may be sued for this, but when I see a patient that comes into my room, they've had all their tests done, they've had their OCTs, their biometry, I'm really sightseeing when I look at their eye. I don't know why I'm even looking at them. I'm just putting on a show. There's nothing I'm going to see that's really going to change their plan. It's just at the moment we still have this idea that I should be examining patients.
And also, there's nothing that you can see that the AI hasn't already seen potentially, right? We see in lung cancer, Cure AI in lung cancer X-rays, they can pick up tumors that the naked eye can't see. And we're seeing this with retina AI, right? So retina are making huge moves towards early diagnosis of conditions based on algorithmic AI learning. And so that's where I think, going back to your previous question, are we solving the right problems? They're the right problems to be solving with AI.
Yeah, I would love to get rid of the waiting room. I mean, if you look at Google reviews, everything's happy except the waiting. So I couldn't agree more. Now, before we finish, we've got some rapid fire questions. Now, all of us have problems with not having brief answers. We all speak too much. So the aim is short answers only. And I'll give you turnabout, and I just want blah. That's your answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, most overrated AI trend right now.
Saying AI.
Nice. Stan?
He took my one.
I thought he was going to say eyejourney, but go on.
Most overrated AI trend right now, lens recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes wonder how much AI is actually going on in there.
Yeah.
All right. So question number 2. I'll let you go first, Stan. One thing that someone listening to this podcast, they should go back to their clinic this week and start automating.
I can't get away from clinical note taking, scribing.
Yeah.
I think it's easy. It's, as I said, it's a button that you would have pressed anyway, probably potentially to have recorded it. You're just pressing it to summarize it for you now.
Yeah. Eric?
I'm going to say your emails, because that is a nice introduction to people to AI. And while we're a little bit more proficient with it, I think the vast majority of people are not. You know, I'd say, well, there's a survey that 70% of ophthalmologists are using AI for some personal gain, but that means 30% are not. So I would just say for anybody who's listening to this and, you know, trying to get glimmer information associated with these products, try your email. Try, see how simple that is and how much time it saves you.
Since some people not, and I'm just pretending this is me, will not even have any idea what you mean by automating email. Do you mean you'd ask Claude to reply to your emails? Do you mean you'd be asking ChatGPT? What are you doing?
There's Claude. There's a service called Canary Mail. I think it's maybe like $10 a month, and it has an automatic AI feature how to respond to that email, and just watch how much time that saves you.
Yeah.
There's also one called Fixer, which is what I use. Fixer's very good.
I can't believe both of you have been sending me AI emails. I've been so disappointed.
Wait, are you upset or is your avatar upset?
Yeah, true. I have no emotions. Yeah, you're right. What am I doing? What can't tech replace, Eric?
Us.
Yeah.
It's not replacing us, and it won't be, not for quite some time. And we talked about this very briefly until you get to quantum computing. But AI is very good at specific tasks and linear types of thinking. When you start getting into very complex problem solving, it isn't very proficient. It can do simple things, you know, when you query it online, but it can't replace us. There's zero chance.
Concur, Stan?
Yeah, absolutely. In my AI image of what the ophthalmic clinic looks like in 2040, right at the center is still the surgeon. And I think what Eric's saying is AI is very good at giving you binary answers, but you know there are at least 100 people doing a PhD on AI emotion right now, like as we speak, right? And until AI can develop cognitive emotion, there's no way it can replace the human touch.
That's beautiful, guys. Really beautiful. Well, thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Stan, for joining me today. It's been such a great catch up. I'm sure you guys have given clinicians a lot to think about. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it, and I'll obviously see you again on the next Peer2Peer episode brought to you by Rainer. But before we finish, a couple of shout outs. We've got eyejourney, obviously affiliated with Rainer, who bring you this podcast. And I know Stan would like to offer listeners the opportunity to demo the platform. You can book a demo at a time that suits you at eyejourney.ai. And Eric, if you'd like to have a look at ScopeXR, he is very happy for you to visit their website, which is finished and ready for you to look at. And that is at scopexr.com. So thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you all again soon.